Hello and welcome back to the World Sheep Podcast. I'm Charlie Parks and I'm here with Matt Clough.
Hello.
And I'm also here with Cousin Danielle.
Hello.
Welcome. I think you were here under happier circumstances.
If only.
It's always nice to I say it's always nice. We've only had you on once before, but it's nice to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I'm excited about going through this season.
I'm excited for a bit of therapy, I think. A bit of sort of group therapy.
Yep, that'll be good.
We are obviously alluding to the fact that we're going to, actually, I've prepared an intro, so I will read that out.
Yeah.
It has been, frankly, a disastrous and embarrassing season for Leicester City women. From sacking manager Amandine Mikel 11 days before the start of the season to failing to retain key players, it's been quite a case study of how not to run a football team. We're letting ourselves be part of the evening, bringing together the Brain Trust, the group chat, consisting of myself, Matt and Cousin Danielle, to pick through the bones of the misery and what feels likely to be a bleak future for Leicester City women.
And men.
Well, yeah, but I don't care about that. First of all, we must say commiserations to Danielle, who has had to suffer through double relegation this season.
Yeah.
Because she supports both Leicester women and Wolves men. So
very, very bleak.
Very bleak season for you. But also it's about to get even bleaker, because that means that you're going to get it from both angles, because Wolves women are in the WSL 2 along with Leicester, and Bolton, Matt's men's team, are now in the same league as Wolves men. So you are outnumbered.
Yeah. I might have to just pick a completely different team.
Different sport?
Different sport. I mean, maybe, should I go with Arsenal? They're all right, aren't they?
Wow.
Oh.
Wow. Not sure about that. London City Lionesses?
Well, maybe.
You're a big Mateus fan?
Yeah. Football's not good. I'm not sure I want to support football anymore.
You could just do what, I think, the WSL higher-ups and Nikki Doucette believe that most women's football fans do, and just follow a player. So just support Chloe Keller.
Well, yeah, okay. I'll be on board with that. Yeah.
Right. Let's not put this off any longer then. So, yeah, before we dig into the full extent of the misery, I think, I'm trying to let you two do most of the talking, because I feel like I've spoken about this topic so much that I never want to speak about it again. So we'll come to you first, Danielle. What was your initial reaction to us being relegated? Surprised? Not surprised? Devastated? Was it deserved?
I was very disappointed, because I do think that there were definitely moments in the season where it was like, we are a WSL team, but we just couldn't maintain that for an entire 90 minutes. And, I think that is where the downfall was, to be honest. I wasn't surprised. There were several signs throughout the season, I think, where it just highlighted that we'd completely lost confidence. Definitely we're at the point where the players looked like the playoff was inevitable, if that makes sense, even before it was confirmed. And I think that we went through the season thinking, the playoff is the safety net, right? We're not going to get relegated this season because we've got the playoff as a safety net. And that was definitely, at least how I felt the vibe was coming across. Yeah, disappointed, but I think post-Christmas, absolutely not surprised.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. And I think that what did surprise me was just, I think being in that situation, in that game, is one thing. Like you say, that felt pretty inevitable, 2 games in after the winter break.
Yeah.
But I think to look at what the situation that Charlton were in, and actually how that game played out in the end, where we would have known going in that they weren't going to create a lot of chances, to not even score in that game, or I genuinely think to not win that game is abysmal. It was there for the taking.
I didn't get to watch the whole game, unfortunately, but for the good chunks that I managed to dip in for, we were definitely the more dominant team. We had more chances, but it was the same old story as it was all through the season. And when we got to the position where we were on penalties, it was like, well, this is almost inevitable where this is going. We can't score a goal. I don't even recall a penalty happening this season.
No, it didn't. No, we haven't. We don't know how to penalty.
But prior to that, the previous season, we had a couple and we were abysmal with those as well. So it just sort of was a bit like, well, writing's on the wall here, isn't it?
100%. And like, yeah, you get like Sophie Whitehouse, the Charlton keeper, was their player of the season, got the Golden Glove against a team that scored 11 goals all season.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? And yeah, like you say, like we don't get into the position where we get given penalties because we don't get into the box often enough.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I will never, ever forget being sat at the Pirelli Stadium on my own on a very cold, I think it was like a Wednesday night. We'd not long got back.
Like
from
2 days after we
yeah,
got back
from America where we got married. I was jet lagged, I was freezing, and it went to penalties against Bristol, and only Julie Tebow scored a penalty. And that was like, Jutta Rantala was on the pitch, Naomi Mouchon was on the pitch, like all of our best attacking players were on the pitch, and only Julie Tebow scored a penalty.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would just, as soon as it went to penalties, I just had flashbacks to that moment, and I was like, this is not going to go well. This is not going to end well. Yeah, and it didn't. Yeah, Matt, over to you for your reflections.
Yeah, I think you've both covered off a lot of what I was going to say. I think the overall vibe certainly pretty quickly post Christmas when West Ham and Liverpool both picked up and we got quite dramatically worse. It felt pretty bad. I must admit, I was always very, very bullish about the playoff, particularly the way it fell with, rather than a sort of a team sneaking in there at the last minute and having a lot of momentum. It was Charlton who'd obviously been in pole position for so much of the season. And I think the last match day when they finished third, obviously, was the only time they weren't in the top two for the entire season. So it felt very nicely set up, about as nicely as that match could have been set up. And then, yeah, I should have been more surprised, but I thought we'd kind of cruise through that. I thought the difference in quality would show, and as I'm sure we'll get into, I think there was a difference in quality there, but for a variety of managerial reasons, we didn't display that. Yeah, and yeah, it only was going to go one way. Think about sort of 60 minutes in when it was still 0-0. I was like, yeah, I don't like the way this is developing.
No, we didn't watch. We watched a little bit of extra time and the penalties, unfortunately. But we were on a walk while the actual night, the normal time, that's the one, was going on. And the longer and longer it went on, and I kept saying to Matt, anything? And he's like, no, still 0-0. I was like, either we're going to concede a stupid classic Leicester goal on the counter, or it's going to go to penalties, and we'll have absolutely no chance for, Bristol City cold night at the Pirelli related reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess that's done a pretty good job of setting the scene, hasn't it, with just grim despair. So we'll stay with you, Matthew. If you had to pick one thing, just one thing, I know it's going to be hard, that you think was the main reason that we were so bad, what would it be? I know it's going to be hard to pick one thing.
Yeah, I just think, and it's slightly worrying, but I think the more that obviously we brought in Rick Passmore initially as the interim and then as the permanent manager, and also we brought in Lee Billiard as director of football at the start of the summer. And it felt like the more that they implemented their vision for the team, the worse we became. Because we finished the first half of the season with a win over LCL. At that point, Liverpool were about to be battered by Chelsea 9-1.
We've still beaten LCL more times this season than any other team. I'd just like to point that out.
LCL, yeah.
If you count in World Sevens as well, to be
times.
fair, we did actually beat them twice in the regular season, which is more than we beat anyone else.
Yeah, I just think overall for me, and again, I'm sure we'll cover this in more depth, but I think it was just a case of we seemed to just lose that identity, that philosophy we had under Amandine, and just not really, there's all, different managers are out there, different philosophies are out there, that's fine. But we seem to scrap Amandine stuff entirely and just not really replace it with anything tangible for me. And I think, I think if you crunch the numbers, obviously there were some players who we would have loved to have this season, but who weren't there. So, yeah, Sophie Howard's the obvious one. But I think overall, I think we actually had a better run of it in terms of injuries. Like, it feels like Mouchon appeared to be, well, she was at least on the bench for a good chunk of the season. Whether we actually, we kind of assumed she could just must not have been fit because of how kind of little she was being used. And then she's played loads in the World Seven. So maybe it was just a decision thing, in which case, yeah,
That's the reason.
I'm even more baffled. We got to see a bit more of Rantala, and we made some signings in January as well, and a couple in the summer window that were all right. And I don't look at the squad, or and a lot of the players are exactly the same. I don't look at that and think, oh well, there was a massive drop off between last season and this season. It may sound over simplistic, but I really think the first place you've got to look is, what was going on with the coaching and the management of the team this year for largely the same group of players who played so far above their levels last season to haul us out of a pretty awful situation with the injuries to just this season, just so little looked like it was working. And, I think it speaks volumes that you've got a manager still talking about processes and fundamentals and basics when you've played 22 matches of the league season. It's like, well, at some point you have to have finished doing the processes and actually implement them. And it just never felt like we got there.
Yeah, and I think that's just a little bit, as the season wore on, it felt like more and more like just silly and naive, like processes and basics. These players are experienced players. You've specifically brought in experience in the January window, and like you're having to talk about processes and basics. Like they're fine. They should know the basics. Like, and even we've got players in that team that play for their country. They know they don't need to be told. Like I wrote something for the Fosse Way, and I said that obviously our seats, we sit just behind the dugout, or we did. Whether we will be there again remains to be seen, but we can hear Rick Passmore shouting, and I remember this was a frustration of yours, Danielle, like all season, like, why are we coaching players individually? Like, why are we shouting, like, go with your runners, win your battles? Like, they know that. They're professional football players. Like, what's the plan? Like, why are you just shouting individual instructions?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot stand that as a thing that happens on the touchline. Like, for the most part, you've spent at least a week preparing for the game. The players are professional players. They should be able to just implement the instruction. It almost makes you think, well, what are we doing? Just waiting to see how it plays out on the day, and then trying to come up with a off the cuff strategy. There's no way that that's happening. There can't be any way that that's happening. But the perception the way that it comes across is that is how it's happening.
Well, yeah, but I think, like you say, that cannot be, and if it is, that's absolutely outrageous. But it can't be the thing that was happening. But equally, how many times, certainly at home games, did we sit there and we'd be a game that I was thinking about this earlier. A game that came to my mind was that Arsenal game when we were 3-0 down at half time. We made a couple of tweaks at half time, and suddenly we looked like a completely different team. And I was like, why didn't we start this team? Why didn't we start with this plan?
Or why did we never actually consider implementing that plan again?
Well, yeah, exactly. It was like that game was almost like a microcosm for me of the absolutely baffling managerial decisions that have gone on and tactical decisions that have gone on throughout the season. It was like they had an absolute. I mean, it's Arsenal, so it's we literally cannot deal with them.
No.
But again, they only beat us 1-0 under Arendine, so it was like they were having an absolute field day with the spacing behind our wing backs, which was just a theme of the season. And lo and behold, we adjusted that at half time and that stopped happening. But we never made that adjustment permanent. And it did have that at times, that feeling of just being all a bit thrown together and a bit improvised. And there would be these little moments where it'd be like, okay, there is a plan, it's coming together, but it would be far too late. And we would either be chasing the game, 1-0 down or whatever, chasing the game, which leaves you exposed, obviously, to conceding more. Or it would be absolutely far too late. So we were 3-4-0 down at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's hard to look past just the manager, I suppose, and the coaching staff or the director of football. Danielle, what's your one thing?
I mean, I think I agree with both of you. You've got to look at the bench, haven't you, and what's going on in the background as to how we've gone from a team that had no depth, no availability last season. It was at one point, I think we all thought that we were going to have to play, and just to make up the numbers.
I think you two would have been all right. It definitely would have raised some questions if I'd tried for players.
But obviously last season wasn't brilliant, but we did all right. Right. I think the objective at the end of the day was to stay up, which is what we achieved. And it was pretty remarkable on the basis of how it played out last season. But I think just fundamentally, why can't we score any goals? Because that's been not just this season, it was also the case last season as well. Yeah. And we have been unlucky. We've not seen a lot of Mouchon, and I think we all expected really brilliant things this season. And when she has been available, there's been glimmers of that, and it's been quite disappointing to not have her there the whole season. But then it's equally, we haven't really had a backup either. And yet again, it's another season where we've not had the depth, particularly in that area. I think everywhere else, I don't think we can blame depth. That lack of, I think we've tried to drive forward, but the lack of end product into the box has been terrible. And then what seems to be inability to get a shot off on target. So yeah, for me, you can only progress if you're scoring goals, right? You can defend and keep everything out, but if you don't score any goals, nothing ever progresses.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, football's quite simple in that sense, isn't it? You got to score goals.
I think you pointed that out before, to be fair.
Yeah. But it's at one point in the season, West Ham were worse than us defensively, but they leapfrogged above us because they were scoring goals. Because they had a reliable goal scorer, Shakira Martinez. They had one. She's gone now. But, if we'd had a reliable goal scorer, that could have been us. But for me, I could get into the overdiagnosis of various things, but I think it comes down to there was no vision. I wasn't clear what we were trying to do going forward. I think the more I've reflected on it, the more I remember being more impressed by our press than when we got the ball back. Yeah. It was we seemed to spend so much time trying to get the press right that we forgot that when we win the ball back, we need to do something with it.
Yeah.
I think that's where the gap was. And then it was, whether or not Mouchon was available at various points, it was well, yeah, okay, she's not available, but why are we playing square pegs in round holes? Why are we putting Shannon in to lead the line when she's a really good winger? I think Hannah Kane is better through the middle than she is off, coming off the wing. So it just felt like we were trying the same thing over and over again, and it wasn't working. And it was well, why don't we just change? And then we changed something else, but it was not the thing that I wanted us to change. It was, yeah. But I think I completely agree with both of you, and that's why I tried to narrow it down to one thing, because I knew we'd all come up with variations on the same thing.
Different ways of saying, why are you doing this?
Yeah, but other than what you said, I think what I'll just contribute is I finally caught up with Sophie Howard, did a interview with Zoe McGrady for her podcast When You're Smiling, the BBC one, to get her reaction to what's happened. Obviously, as a player that used to be in that dressing room, I think she spoke a lot about the lack of stability, the downfall hasn't just happened this season, it's been coming. We've always been around the bottom of the table, and there wasn't ever really enough stability or plan to climb. And then a disconnect between, she was speaking for herself, mainly what she saw was the reality of the situation that we were in, particularly with the league expanding and stuff like that, and what the club felt, or what and I just feel like that instability and that disconnect has just played out on the pitch. I think the players could see it, because I think that's another thing Sophie said is they've been very good at being adaptable because they've had to be, and they've always felt quite a together unit. The players, I don't think I've ever felt like they were all not speaking to each other. We've never seen that sort of body language where players are getting fed up with each other, arguing. And I think they were playing for each other, but I just don't know if there was just a complete disconnect between what they were feeling in the dressing room and what was, the vision, quote unquote, that was coming from the staff. Because and then, there were reports like coming out that they were saying they were happy, there was a really good vibe. But at that point in time, I was asking myself, why are you happy?
Yeah.
Like, we're bottom. It just, like you said, it just screamed of complacency. But I don't think the players were complacent. It just felt like the messages that they were getting was, it's okay, just keep trying, just keep turning up in training. Processes, like, focus on, I don't know, individual battles, and it will, we'll just win that playoff game. And it just feels like we've set them up for failure, really. But also, like, on the theme of like instability, and this is what Sophie said about they're quite good at being an adaptable group of players that will just adapt to a new manager. But I feel like I was very bullish on the fact that I wasn't, obviously, to lose a player like Sophie Howard and then to lose Janice Cayman in January was, you're always going to feel the impact of that. But I spoke to some other Leicester fans online who were like, I'm really worried about the lack of leadership. I was like, there's players there that have been there long enough to take up that mantle. Sam Tierney, Shannon O'Brien, Hannah Kane. But I do wonder whether just taking those pieces out, those voices, Janice Cayman was a captain, Sophie Howard, like, that just like further rocked the foundations of the team, taking those big characters in the dressing room out, or whether it was just that was one step too far in this team being able to be adaptable.
I think on the flip side of that, I agree. Those two players were, like, pillars, weren't they, of the team? Like, when they were with us, they were in the team every week. I think it was just that last game of the previous season that Sophie didn't play. She played every single minute, and Janice was playing like whatever position was required of her for like the last season and a half that she was with us. But then, like, you look at the players that came in and the level of experience, particularly with like Van Egmond, is she still the like most capped oldest
most
player?
capped Australian.
Like, she is a leader. So, I'm not suggesting that we place, everything on her shoulders, but, from like I guess a like for like in terms of experience and leadership, you think, well, actually, if we lose Janice, we've got Van Egmond there who can like play a similar role, or at least that's how I sort of would have viewed her on the pitch.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And then we've got, obviously, we were all, I think, really excited about Ashley Neville coming in, because when she played against us when she was in a Spurs shirt, she was always amazing. And again, I think she's got those leadership qualities as well, and you could see those coming through. But then we go back to the square pegs in round holes. It was like we brought in two really experienced right backs. And then we tried to put them both in the team.
Yeah. At wing back as well, which isn't certainly Ashley Neville wasn't.
And then put our player that was probably our player of the season, and up until that point, Asmini Trail, shoved her across into the back three to accommodate those two players. Which it's like he Passmore, or whoever, I guess Passmore, the book has to start with him, I suppose, but obsessed with experience over anything else. Like, we won't get into this too much because my head will explode, but bringing Rachel Williams on in the playoff game ahead of Naomi Mouchon is absolute insanity to me. As much of a legend of the game as Rachel Williams is, maybe he's thinking she's proper Leicester, she'll fight for the badge. She had that reputation at United, didn't she, the past couple of seasons, like, smash glass, Rachel Williams, but I just think you needed something. And from what I've heard from people that were at the game, watching the game, you needed somebody to bring some energy. And at the end of the day, she's 38, 39. Like, you can't expect her to like run at defenders.
And for me, the way that it's played out with, again, the experience coming in, Rachel Williams, a good example of another leader. But I don't really feel like the role that she ended up playing for the 5-6 months that she was with us she's still with us at the moment, as far as we know, she will be. I expected her to be a backup for Musha.
Yeah, totally.
and it just didn't really seem to play out in that way. But again, like, yeah, I do agree that Sophie Howard and Janice Cayman were massive losses, but I do think that, you know, there were a handful of players that we brought in that were equally as experienced to drive it forward.
No, I do agree. That's a really good point. And I think, you know, you have to maybe look at Ashley Neville in her role, trying to be a bit of a leader. I know she was made vice captain when Janice left. Sam Tierney was officially made captain, and then Ashley Neville was given vice captain. That's, you know, if you're in a relegation battle, you've literally just walked into this team. You've played for Spurs for like basically your entire WSL career, and then suddenly you've got to be a leader in this brand new team who's fighting relegation. That's got to be quite a tough, you know, no matter how experienced you are, that's got to be quite a tough environment to walk into. You've got to get this dressing room of players that have never played with you before, except for some of them who we seem to like to get some Spurs rejects, but like, yeah, like most players have never played with you before, and you've got to get them to listen to you on the pitch and in the dressing room. And I'm sure, you know, her experience and her qualities have spoken for themselves, but it's got to be tough. And then, like, Van Egmond, I think, to speak to her, like, I completely agree. I hadn't really thought about that as her as a leader, but like, yeah, like I feel like Joey Montemuro spoke during the Asian Cup about how he talks to her about tactics and stuff, and I was like, can we have a bit of that at Leicester, please? Like,
Yeah.
But then we're also asking her to play a completely different role. She's got a very different role in the Matildas now. She tends to come on as a bit more of a super sub, 10 minutes, go and create something. Whereas we were trying to play her as like an all action midfielder for like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Look, at the end of the day, she's not that sort of player. So yeah, square pegs, round holes again, innit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree.
So we've managed to come up with about 10 different problems, which, you know.
Yeah.
I've got another one to throw in as well. My final conclusion on this point, and I've mentioned it like a couple of games before the end of the season, was just like the lack of consistency in games. We were a 70-minute team the whole way through. We either didn't show up for the first 20 minutes or we absolutely lost the plot in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Pretty much the theme of the season.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like there were a lot of games where it felt like the game was lost in the first 20 and then we spent 70 minutes actually looking okay and figuring stuff out, but it's like, well, it's too late. Or there'd be games where we do okay and then just completely collapse. Yeah. No, I think that's and again, I just feel like under Amandine we weren't great all the way through the season. There were obviously some bad moments, and there were games where we did similar stuff, but there were also games where it felt like for the entire 90 minutes everything clicked into place. And I mean, obviously, I think the win over Liverpool, even though we went down to 10, that felt pretty even. And I didn't come away from that thinking, oh right, there's really something there. And then the LCL again, that was almost like a classic Amandine back to the wall kind of performance. But again, it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't inspiring.
Hugely. No, that's a good way of putting it.
I think it's interesting because you kind of like, I had to remind myself when it got to Christmas. A lot of people were like, "Oh, they're actually going to be all right. They've strung together a couple of results." But yeah, I think when you actually look back now, you kind of like, could we be flattering to deceive? But like, you know what I mean? Like we were flattering to deceive a little bit. I think we had capitalised at that point, I think, on Liverpool being pretty atrocious, West Ham being pretty dire as well, and then LCL, who for some reason we've just got their number.
Yeah,
most of the time, other than the away game at the latter half of the season. But yeah, I think they've just been all over the shop, haven't they? Like with their identity, what they're trying to do. So that's a whole other thing. But yeah, we actually, when you look at it and you stretch it out, you're like, no, actually, it was just sort of riding our luck for a little bit. Yeah. And then when West Ham and Liverpool sort of woke up at Christmas and got, West Ham got in the new manager and Liverpool brought all their signings in, it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And in that, and I've done a bit of looking through some stats before chatting to you guys, just to check to make sure that my bias wasn't completely.
You're very brave to have revisited any stats, because we were both just like, no, we don't need to look at this.
I can't do it to myself.
But with that LCL game that we won, big chances missed. LCL had 5. So in that game, we were really riding our luck. Was that the game where the penalty was saved?
Yeah, that was one of their 5 big chances, I assume.
Yeah. And it was like the worst penalty I've ever seen.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Like, fair play. Look, I love Yanni. Yanni's brilliant. Give her the benefit of the doubt. She guessed the right way, gave her the eyes, whatever. But it was awful. It was an awful penalty. Oh dear. Right. Well, I say moving swiftly on because it's not going to get any better. Matt, you haven't spoken for a while. So we often talk in football about that was the game that relegated them.
Yeah.
Was there a particular game or moment where you felt the tide really turned and it was like, well, could the tide turn? You know what I mean? Like you felt like that's the moment, that's the one.
Yeah, I don't think there was a specific game. I think, to be honest, if I'd been brave enough, as Danielle was, to look back through the stats in the season in real great depth, I think there were a couple of games, actually not the ones involving Leicester, but there were just a couple of games where West Ham and Liverpool it felt like they pulled a result out of nowhere as they both sort of started to recover. And I think those were the ones where I was like, oh, this is really bad. Like they're going to overtake us. I think actually, the 2-0 loss at Liverpool was a bit of a hammer blow because that was one as well where we basically hadn't played a game for like 5 weeks, had we? It was all leading up to that. Basically everything we just talked about came to the fore. We didn't look up. Yeah, again, you had 5 weeks on the training ground. I know some of the players are away on international duty, but 5 weeks on the training ground and you come away talking about processes and fundamentals. Again, it's like, well, okay, maybe don't try and work on these quite so much during the matches that you have to play. Maybe do it on the thing called the training ground. And then, I think after that Liverpool game, we had a little run of games that looked feasible. So like Villa at home, Brighton at home, and LCL away. And I think I kind of did some napkin maths and sort of said if we can get 6 or 7 points from those 3 games, that's kind of where the season hinges. And we lost all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And then as a specific moment, it's one you've already mentioned, but as the minutes were ticking away on that playoff and we still hadn't scored, to then see the substitutions pop up on whatever app I was on, and it was Rachel Williams coming on and not Naomi Moosh. That was the moment where I was like, I really don't think this is gonna fall for us. And again, I'm sorry, I know that's harsh on Rachel Williams, but I don't. I think, as we sort of said earlier, it felt like we spent so much of the season thinking this will be the match that Mouchon starts. Like, she must be fit now. She must be fit now. And she just kept being on the bench and getting 10 minutes here and 20 minutes there. And it's like, oh, maybe. But then the amount she's played at the World Sevens, it just feels like she probably was fit for a lot of that. And for whatever reason, I can't even call it a philosophy because that's going to be far too grand of a word of whatever the hell we were trying to do kind of tactically and in a way of approaching the match. But clearly Mouchon was not a part of that, despite the fact that, like you said, Danielle, I think, whenever she came on, we only got glimpses of her, but those glimpses were generally scored a couple of goals. Defenders clearly, you could just see how the opposition treated her almost completely differently to every one of our other players, with the exception of maybe Rantala, where they were frightened of her, they backed off her.
Yeah.
It felt like bringing Mouchon on kind of shifted the defence we were facing back like 10 yards just automatically because they were that worried about her. And so, in conclusion, basically the entire second half of the season and the playoff match were the moments when I thought this is going badly wrong. Sorry, I've left you guys with loads of stuff there. Oh, and I can also say when we sacked Amandine.
That was the moment. Wow, that was early on, yeah. I think it was obviously that moment. I was like, we've absolutely fucked it. What have we done? We've just completely ripped everything up. We had something going and we've ripped it up to start again. But then you see the green, you think what a green shoots, you think we're going to get away with it. And then I think the thing that came to the moment, very specific moment that came to my mind when I put this question in was I just felt like the mood shifted and the mentality shifted so much in this moment. It was that second goal that we conceded at home against Villa.
Yeah.
When we'd been 1-0 up, we conceded a silly set piece goal, like literally just after half time. And then we were well in the game. We were getting forward. We were creating chances in the sort of
Leicester chance,
vague way that we create chances.
Yeah.
And I think it was from our attack.
Yeah.
Kirsty Hansen, of course, goes steaming up the other end of the pitch, and I still don't understand what Yanni was doing. Bless her. And I think you just saw, like, I think the air just left all of the players' lungs. They just looked absolutely lost. And then the fight was gone. Then there was no trying to get back into the game. From that, just felt to me like at that moment, it was already bad, of course, but at that moment, up until that moment, there was a tiny, tiny little glimmer of hope. There was a tiny little fire, and it just went snuffed out at that moment. That really stuck with me, like just the reactions of the players.
Yeah.
So that was my moment.
I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I think, like, obviously the second half of the season was a disaster. You know, I think the first game back against Spurs, it's almost like, well, you can sort of like, you can forgive that in some respects because Spurs were having such a good run. Like last season, it was a very even contest. But this season, they've just been in a completely different realm to us. But I think that the second goal that we conceded against West Ham, when we were just absolutely attack. And Charlie, you said, they're going to score. They're going to score on the break here. And it's exactly what they did. And from there, it was literally just a domino effect. Because in that game, it would be unfair to say that we lost 3 points because I don't think we did. But I think we lost a point there. I think
we gave West Ham 3 points in the process, yeah.
The Villa game, we lost a point there. Again, it would be unfair to say that we lost 3 points because I just don't think we were good enough for the 3 points, but we lost a point there. Let me just remind myself of some of the
other games we failed to pick up points in.
But, you know, the Brighton game, again, 1-0, another point that we threw away. I know that it's just like, oh, well, it's only a couple of points. It wouldn't have made a difference. But from a confidence perspective, to have not been on that win list, like it was all losses, wasn't it? At the tail end of the season, to have not been on that run where you're just losing absolutely everything, to have some glimmer of confidence that you're going to be able to get some sort of result out of the game. But yeah, that West Ham goal that we conceded completely against the run of play, I think just literally was the start of putting the straws on the camel's back.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about that, but that's a great shout.
Yeah, it is. I think our sort of opinion of that game was probably coloured at the time by the fact that Matt was absolutely losing his shit at the ref.
Yeah.
Which wasn't great refereeing performance, but we can't blame the ref.
No.
And just felt like they'd scored 2 bangers and there wasn't really a lot we could do. But again, it's like what we've said about the first half of the season. You look back now and you think, no, that was a real opportunity. We were the better team for most of that game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I've spoken about this in multiple formats, podcasts, writing, whatever. I just think if you look at what West Ham did, they were in a very similar situation to us, really. They were worse off than us before the winter break. And they brought in Rita Guarino and she just like put in a very basic game plan. And it was
they pulled the emergency cord, didn't they?
Yeah, it's just defend and hit teams on the break. But it worked because they've got the players to do that. They've got a really fast, dynamic front three of Ueki, Asoi and Martinez, so they can do that and they can defend. And that's what they did and it worked. Whereas we continued to try and cobble some sort of mad pressing team together out of players that aren't suited to that.
And I think to give a small amount of dues, I do think that there were some games that we were really impressive with the press.
Yeah.
But what really, really let us down was when we got the ball back, it was almost instantly, it was just like what seemed like the most easy pass ever. Just when I can't even describe what was happening.
Like Charlie just said, it felt like, again, I keep saying the word processes now. I've become what I always never wanted to be, but like it felt like we spent all of our time working on our press and no time working on what the hell you did when you actually won the ball back.
Yeah.
And like you say, I think the one that always springs to my mind is I think the first 20 minutes of the Brighton away match where we were all over them.
Yeah.
Looked really, really good. Had a couple of opportunities, but the confidence was so shot once they got the ball. It just didn't work. And then as soon as Brighton scored, again, it was
Domino effect.
It was the domino effect. You could just see every player's shoulders slump and thought, here we go again. And so it proved.
Danielle, anything positive to say about this season at all?
Other than it's over?
I think there were some individually good moments. I can't see us keeping Sarah Mailing, unfortunately, but there were some games in which she really, really impressed me going forward. Like, defensively as well, she was really good, but like driving the team forward, she was like pretty exceptional. And you could see that the quality was like one step ahead of the other players around her. Like, not all of them, obviously, but like you could see that like her quality was in a slightly different league.
Yeah, for sure.
I
There
guess
was one particularly great moment when she nutmegged Verena Hanshaw in that West Ham game. Yeah. And she visibly went, oh.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. Go on.
The couple of times that Mouchon came on and really showed us what she could do, it was literally she'd been on for 10 minutes and she scored a goal. And it was like, how many players has she walked past there? Like, that's really downplaying the amount of skill and quality that she's got. But when you're watching it, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
She's just like, she just breezed past five opposite players and put it in the back of the net.
Well, when she came on against Chelsea, we were all sitting there saying, like, Lucy Bronze and Kadisha Buchanan are backing off her. Like, we were like, we start her against Charlton, we're well away.
Yeah.
Well, but, yeah.
She got
that played out.
5 minutes in it extra time, so, yeah.
And
Damn it.
I think top goal scorer this season, Shannon O'Brien, just didn't stop fighting. She just did not stop fighting. Like, she had that moment of absolute lunacy in the Liverpool game, which I wasn't sure she was ever going to come back from. After she went down to the bench for a couple of games after that. But she just never stopped running. And the only reason that we scored against Chelsea was because she capitalised on an error. She was in the right place and she'd positioned herself well and she'd got the fight in her still. It feels really unjust to sort of like only pick out a couple of players, because I think all of them did their absolute best, but clearly the framework around them has put us in the position that we're in. Like, there were definitely times where, we didn't play to the whistle, for instance, and I do remember we did concede a goal. I can't remember who it was against, but we did concede a goal as a result of like not playing to the whistle.
I'm sure of the, how many was it in the end? 51 goals that we conceded. There would probably been quite a few in there where concentration could have been there. I think when you're in the headspace that our players must have been in, I think you can have those moments. You can forgive a couple of those moments, can't you, where the concentration is not quite there, or you feel like the world's against you, so you sort of throwing your arms up in the air. But when it keeps happening week after week, you start to think, okay, well, someone's got to sort of take the reins here.
Yeah, like, where's the discipline here that we can't do that? But anyway, I've digressed and I've gone back onto the negative again. Yanni had brilliant games. We found what felt like a little shining light at the end of the season with Katie Keane coming through, and it's like, well, there's like a really big chance that she's likely to be the number 2, if not fighting for the number 1, depending on the situation with Yanni, because no doubt she's very sought after from WSL teams, but also other teams in Europe as well. It's sad because you feel like emotionally attached to all of the players, and it's like, well, I don't really want to criticise anyone, and I want to be positive about everyone. And I think that everybody had at least one good game, if not more, and the team spirit was there until it felt like it wasn't.
Yeah, I think if you look at like the men's team, I know the men's teams had criticism for a lot of those players, you know, being on absolutely astronomical wages for even being in the Championship,
Mhm.
and a lot of, you know, being criticised of downing tools to some extent, not really like fighting as much as they could have been. But I've never, like, you know, you get frustrated with an individual sometimes, don't you? You've had a bad game, made a couple of bad decisions, or you think, you know, like, yeah, you think it's placed the whistle, you know, you're not getting a foul, get up.
Mhm.
But collectively, all I feel now for that group of players is just really bad for them, because I just feel like there's some good players in there that are being made to look mediocre by the collective lack of vision and direction. But yeah, I was going to you've mentioned all the players really that I would want to mention. I think Olivia McLaughlin looks brilliant as well, but you know, I sort of feeling a bit bittersweet about that, because I think she'll be going back to the WSL, I imagine.
She'll have some,
But yeah, I think Casey Keane as well, I think was a big one for me. I was absolutely chuffed to see her. Like, chose to protect my peace. I didn't watch the Arsenal game at all. And then, yeah, when we played Chelsea, I'd heard she'd had some good moments, but you know, you see, like, you know, 19-year-old keeper, not played in the WSL, other than that, being thrown into the lion's den against Arsenal. And I didn't know what to expect. And I just remember watching her in that Chelsea game and thinking, wow, like, I trust you. I completely trust you 100%. And, you know, at the end of the day, she made a couple of great saves in that playoff game and saved a couple of penalties, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But if we have got Casey Keane in a dream next season, then that's something to hang on to, isn't it? Matt, any more positives to add, or have we literally wrung the very drops of positivity that we can?
You've given it a right good ringing. That the players that came to mind for me were Katie Keane and Olivia McLaughlin. I'll say just seeing Mouchon and Rantala get back on the pitch. I think particularly Mouchon, because obviously Rantala had that brilliant season a couple of years ago. Then last season she was basically out through injury the whole time. Then she came back. Then she was out injured and all that kind of stuff. But I think I just felt so sorry for Mouchon. Like, she'd had this amazing season in France. She'd been bought over by Amandine, who had managed her in France. Pretty much instantly does her ACL and misses the entire season. And just as she's presumably preparing to kind of walk back into the team and show everyone what she's made of, Amandine gets sacked. And she must have, at that point, just been thinking, how have I managed to end up in this situation where I'm at a club where I've barely played, you know, the manager doesn't know me, all this kind of stuff. And, you know, I've said this like 5 times now, but like, if she was fit and wasn't getting the game time, then I would have been fuming if I was her. But I think, it was still great to see her get back on the pitch, score her first couple of Leicester goals as well. They may very well be the last, because again, I feel like there'll be plenty of teams around Europe who will be looking at her and what she did in France and sort of thinking, you know, if she can stay fit, there's a real player in there. You know, Amandine is currently managing Monterrey in Mexico, who just narrowly missed out on winning the title. So yeah, I'm maybe she'll fancy a reunion with her in a place slightly hotter than Leicestershire. Yeah.
I hope she gets a good move somewhere. She deserves one.
Yeah.
Especially if, like you say, she was fit and wasn't being played. Because if I ever find that out, why I order.
That would just be absolute insanity, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, on brand. I renamed the day that we sacked Amandine McKellar, I renamed our group chat Head Loss FC, and it's remained Head Loss FC for the rest of the season.
Yes.
We are Head Loss FC. Matt, I say quickly, as briefly as you can, where do we go from here? Like, what do we need to change, and what are your sort of realistic expectations for next season?
So I like to think that I'm not one of those football fans who will just as soon as anything goes wrong, will pin everything on the manager. And I like to think I've generally got a bit more perspective than that and can say, well, you know, there's structural or institutional problems, or, you know, I think last season is a good example where I think from the outside looking in, a lot of people were saying, oh, Leicester, you know, never invested, all this, that. We were sat there thinking it's actually just been outrageously bad luck with the injuries, and it will turn around when we get players back. And so it did. but I do think I don't. You've both said it already, but I just don't see the vision, the philosophy. I think the difference between last season and this season, it wasn't down to injuries. Like I say, I think we probably got more lucky of injuries this season we did last. It wasn't really down to personnel because by and large we had the same team. Obviously, again, Janice left, Sophie left, but we did bring in some good players as well. I can't right now. I think the quickest fix is whether you get rid of Passmore entirely or whether you bump him down to being assistant manager, which I think was always generally going to be always the plan until obviously the tragic Matt Beard situation. Yeah, I just think we need to bring in someone who can take a step back, see the wood for the trees, let Passmore or whoever do all the process stuff and the coaching stuff while they come up with okay, here is how you play when you're in possession. Here is what you do if you're behind. Here is what you do when you're ahead. And yeah, it just actually gives us a bit of a philosophy because we've said it so many times throughout the season. I still cannot tell you what kind of brand of football we were trying to play. There's occasionally we were like, let's do a super pressing aggressive. There was occasionally let's pass it out from the back. There was occasionally let's revert to Amandine style play and just bump it down the wings and see what happens. Again, you said it earlier about Sophie Howard's comments about the lack of consistency. I think that can be at multiple levels, and I think just this season there was just never any consistency. So yeah, I'd want a change of manager and get a manager in, and like say keep Passmore as head coach or assistant manager or whatever you want to call him if you want. But yeah, that's the route I'd go down. And in terms of the season, how it pans out, I think obviously we've just found out a couple of 3 players, Hannah Kane, Rosella Ayan and Chantal Swaby are leaving with their contract expiring. I imagine we're going to have some more departures this summer. I think there will be a fair amount of churn, but then there are also some players there, like let's say Ashley Neville and stuff, who have signed contracts, probably aren't going to go anywhere. So I think if we can, make some decent signings and not kind of really have a fire sale, then I think we'll have to be up there as probably favourites for the league next season. I just, like I say, for me, obviously the summer could go. We could bring in a brilliant manager tomorrow, and then if we still have a bit of a meltdown in a transfer window, it could all go out the window. But if I think the squad quality dropped sort of 10 or 20% over the transfer window just through comings and goings, but we could get a new manager in, I think, and a good manager, it goes without saying. But I could see next season being very good, but in both men's football and general, I know it's a fool's errand to be like, well, we got relegated, we'll get to go to
we'll go back up.
We'll get some nice new away days, we'll batter a few teams, we'll actually see Leicester score some goals and we'll cruise back into the WSL. I've heard this song before from Bolton Wanderers many a time, and normally it gets to about October and you think, we're still just as bad, but now we're playing worse teams as well. So
it just gets a spiral of sadness.
So I'll keep my powder dry, but I think for me it's the manager has to be the first port of call, unfortunately.
I think I'm gonna that's my only, because it's difficult, isn't it, because there's so much uncertainty. I think Passmore said in these comments after the playoff game, like they do not know like what budget they've got, what the plan is like for next season yet. They're going to have a sit down over the summer and all this stuff. So I think
by that point, it's already too late, right?
No, exactly. Like the theme again, like
the strategies are already being implemented by other teams. I guess I'm classing the other teams as in the other WSL teams, which unfortunately we're not part of anymore. But like the big teams that we quite frankly we're never going to compete with like last season or for probably for like a long time in the future. But those big teams, they're already implementing that strategy. They've already got the pen on paper in a lot of instances, haven't they? Not, we're going to sit down in the summer. And well, actually, the summer's too late because people will have already made decisions about where they're going to go. If players are leaving us as part of their contract ending, which I think a lot of them end at the end of this month for most players. I think like the 30th of June is generally the end of contract for most female players. Like, when are we classing as the summer?
I might be paraphrasing there. Like, he might have said in the next couple of weeks, but you can imagine a situation in which, like, we've got to do, like we did last season, we've got to do a review of things. Like, it'll take me like 2 seconds to review this season. Something needs to change. But yeah, so I might have been paraphrasing there, but like you say, the change does need to happen relatively quickly, because not just the WSL, like you say, the WSL sides that you're comparing us to, like the WSL2 sides as well. There's teams in that league. It's getting more and more competitive. They want that promotion. They know that there's that extra promotion slot now. You know, Newcastle, Bristol, Forest, they all invested quite heavily last season and didn't make it. So we've got to be mindful of that. Like, we're not going to be able to go down, like you say, like squad dropped 10%, 20% and just be like, no, it'll be okay because we're still that a little bit better. We'll go straight back up, because they'll be looking to overtake us. They'll be looking to snap up the players that we want. And because their team's on the up, and in Forest and Newcastle case, they've got Premier League backing.
Yeah.
We haven't.
And equally, they'll be looking at our squad and being like, oh, you know, we'll offer Leicester a bit of money for them. And
exactly.
Yeah.
That weakens them, strengthens us. And then, but I think, the only thing I can see at the moment is the change in leadership in terms of the manager, because we've got to be realistic about what budget we're going to have, what investment we're able to make. And we've got to be able to get someone in that's going to be able to get something. We've got to get someone in that's going to make us better than the sum of our parts, basically. So, yeah, Danielle, do you agree? Anything else to add on next season? My expectation is not Matt's. I think we're going to have at least another season, because I just think the other teams are going to, in that league, are going to invest and they're going to be baying for blood. And I just don't, at the moment, with all the uncertainty, I just don't see us being able to sort of, we'll probably be up there. I don't think we're going to be like, down the bottom or anything. I mean, famous last words, but I just don't think we're going to, I don't see us getting straight back up. Do you disagree or agree? Or
I think I've got like 3 scenarios that are playing out in my head. Like, the like really realistic one is we'll be in the top half of the table. Like, it'll be comfortable. Everything will be really close, and we'll just be in the top half of the table. Really unrealistic is that we'll just come straight back up. We'll be champions. We'll absolutely decimate the league. Very unrealistic. And then the one where I'm thinking, like, this almost also feels realistic, but it's like it would almost be like, well, it kind of like serves you right for sort of what feels like the general attitude of the club is that we sort of storm the league, then we drop down to 3rd, then we're in that playoff game and we lose to Charlton.
Yeah, 100%. That's what's going to happen. Right, end of. That's it. That is what's going to happen. Yeah, we'll be like, we'll do Charlton. We'll be top or like second for like all season, and then we'll just do something silly. And yet, 100% we'll be in that playoff game again. It'll be exactly the same. It'll be 0-0. We'll lose on penalties. Oh God, yeah, that's what's going to happen. That's it. End of.
The only possible addition I'd put there is, as well as losing on penalties, it will be a team with Leipzig in goal, or Mouchon will score the winning penalty against us, or something.
Hannah Kane will definitely score the winning penalty against us.
That's the one.
We'll also play Crystal Palace in both the League Cup and the FA Cup and lose, obviously. But I'm guessing you agree about the management situation.
Yeah, I think for me, over the summer, like, squad retention needs to really be the key thing. Like, how many of these players can we retain to keep some stability there through the core of the team? But then, we definitely need to have a look at, like, why have these players not been able to get results? And I don't think you guys listened to the interview with Rick Passmore that happened on BBC?
Yeah.
Around Christmas time. And he's like a really knowledgeable football guy. But I'm just, again, are we doing Are we square pegging a round hole again?
Yeah, he's a coach. I think he's a coach,
Yeah.
not a manager. Like, he's an assistant coach. He's a player coach. He's not a manager. And you know, we see people make that. Like, so Renee Slagers, for example, was a player coach and an assistant manager, and then she's made that transition. But she's just a really good. Like, this is a massive tangent. I don't actually know if she's that good a tactician, but she's really, really good at in-game management and seeing what needs to change and when, and she changes it quickly. And he's got the sort of player to player individual management thing. It's just the bigger picture. It's just not there.
No.
And maybe like Matt suggested, maybe he's a nice guy to have around the building and it'll be a positive thing to keep him there. But I think we need somebody steering the ship that has got a real vision and a real talent and knack for managing games, basically. Because that's, if we've got a good vibe in the dressing room, brilliant, but that needs to translate to something on the pitch, and that hasn't happened. So we need to have both things working together.
And as I alluded to earlier, it needs to happen sooner rather than later, because again, you don't want to be missing out on players, but equally, you don't want to be bringing in players for a system where, you know, we do the first 2 games of next season, you know, let's say we are where we are now, and we lose the first 2 games and then we're making a change, and it's like, well, this was almost inevitable, so like, what are we doing about it now? Let's have a bit of foresight to do something for next season.
Yeah, I agree. So, Leicester, your brief is clear. Act quickly. I think we'll leave it there, because that's been quite a discussion. I hope everyone of a Leicester persuasion has enjoyed this sort of cathartic group therapy. And if anyone is listening who's not of a Leicester persuasion, you just sort of like, I don't know, feel like kind of, I mean, you can't look away from a car crash. Like, I hope you've enjoyed this ride as well. Danielle, thank you very much for being our guest. Again, I'm sorry it wasn't under more happy circumstances, but it was a pleasure to have you on.
You will. Anytime.
I've had to listen to you moaning all season, so next to me. So you've been very Emma Hayes this season. You've been very brutal. You've been like, you're not good enough. Get out. We'll get someone else in. So
I've gone for the more balanced view of things this evening. I think I've had a short break from football.
You managed to take a step back.
Yeah, and evaluate.
Brilliant.
Hi, it's post-record Charlie here. Sorry for the abrupt ending to that recording. We ran out of time on our Google Meet, but just thought I'd do a little wrap up. Thank Cousin Danielle again for coming on the podcast for an hour and a bit of some much needed therapy, and do my usual spiel, which is, if you're not already following the podcast, please do so you never miss an episode. And if you could please give us a rating if you're enjoying it, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you very much for listening again. See you next time. Bye.